All right. It's my pleasure to welcome my good friend and the greatest activist in LA, Film the Police LA. What's up, man?
What's going on, brother?
Is man, we've been talking about this for a while, man. Is I'm so and right before the new year, I feel like I don't know, you feel like maybe this was like meant to be like this particular day.
Yeah, yeah.
Um so I guess first, man, I just want to well actually first let me just say President Carter just passed away, so I just want to express my condolences. Just he was a good man and I don't know, man. It seems like that's something that I've known you long enough to know what a good person you are, but I feel like that. I don't know, like that. Do you feel like that hurt him in a way, like with some of the public? Um,
What do you mean by that?
like basically, like it seemed like people took the good thing in him as a weakness. Like that's the way I don't know. I perceived it, and
Yeah,
it's
listen,
kind of
he was a man of principle, and I think he kind of got ran over back in, I guess it'd been like 79 going into 80 election. And listen, yeah, you could have everybody has their views on his presidency, but I think it's hard to say anything other than he was an exceptional ex-president.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, he hostage negotiation. He just never stopped, and he didn't cash in on it like all these other, uh, all these. I'm like being careful with my words, but all these other people cashing in on their ex presidency. So, hey, man, I was just wondering, like, what's been up with you? I know you launched a website. I was just want to hear, like, what's going on in the Film the Police LA universe right now.
Yeah, like I've been saying for a while that I've been waiting for the new chief to come in to start hammering them. I've been kind of sitting back for, I guess, almost a year now from the time that it became apparent that Moore was going to have to step down. And then he did step down, and they put a replacement in there that was just temporary. So it made no sense for me to move forward with a lot of complaints that I knew that the temporary chief would just throw out. Right, he would
Yeah.
just dismiss them, and deal with that on the way out, wipe everything out. And so I was like, no, I'm gonna wait for the new guy to come in.
Hmm.
And now that he's in, I'm in a full court press. The way I look at it, the last 4 years, I have been documenting lots of police misconduct, and in the process, writing lots of complaints. Now, the thing about it is, I've said this a million times. I had two goals: to either hold the cops accountable or to expose the process for being broken
Yeah,
when it comes to holding cops accountable. And I think that over the last 4 years, I have a lot of documentation to do just that.
absolutely. I recently posted. For a long time I tried to avoid this because I'm busy too. But basically, like I had this like really big problem with the slumlord that bought my building, and I think you've actually rubbed off on me because I'm going full court press, and actually I'm going to write about this. But basically, I won a uh, yeah. I mean, I think this is a good time. I won what's considered a landmark case that hasn't been. I won the first harassment case in this new unit that was created by I think the city council, and while the fine is a joke, they were fined $250. I'm just going to tell everybody real quick what happened, and then we're going to get to the more fun stuff. But I think like you'll appreciate this. The short version is that in February or March, an agent of this slumlord called Veritas Investments, which you guys can all look up, they used to be the biggest landlord in San Francisco. They came into my apartment under the guise of a leak. They said there was some kind of leak, and they've been trying to throw everybody out of here for a while. When the person was in here, the cameras were on because, like I've got a few people that don't like me, so there's always cameras. The person came in. They took a photograph of my LA. I'm a member of the LA Press Club, which is, for those who don't know, a journalist organization. They took a photograph of the badge, and then they filmed all around my apartment. So yeah, and then if it wasn't for that camera, and I'm bringing this full circle because you using the power of the camera to hold police accountable, it just I don't know. I still can't believe that happened, and I have a lot of sleepless nights over it. So I just wanted to put that out there. That's what I don't know why they're after me. Um,
You
but
have no. I mean, they just want you out. They want to raise the rent. What do you suppose it is?
the in the I just got a CPRA with the whole investigative file.
Mhm.
The likely reason I would say is to throw me out because I've been here a while, but because they took a picture of my press badge, I can't rule out. I don't know this woman who did that. Like we've had friends who I I don't know if she's friends with neo Nazis or the many enemies that I have too, and so uh, thank God I had that camera on. Look, man, I mean, my list of enemies is kind of long here, right? Like, not as many as people who you've held accountable, um, but she took a big photograph of the badge, the LA Press Club badge. Um, so, so yeah, just keeping things light, man. Just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, now she knows not to come
Y-
snooping around taking
y-
pictures. And
yeah, and I'm just yeah, I'm just getting started. I want to really put out
you
there
know
what
me,
these people.
I would take that picture. I'd buy her name, create a website, throw that picture up on there of what she was doing, and let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, I definitely think that you and the people I respect a lot have rubbed off on me. I've learned that one thing I've learned is that I used to think things could be done a certain way with, I hate to use this word, civility. And more, I'm just not sure that that works.
I
With
think it can, but you have to set the standard first. I think
yeah,
you have to rough them up
yeah,
considerably until they start complying, and then you can start using normal processes. But until you get to that point, you have to kind of just, use some guerrilla tactics.
yeah. I never thought that that's what it would for me what it would come to. But I just like I'm so angry over what happened there that yeah, I'm gonna yeah, they made a mistake. I don't know what to say. Um, but yeah, man, I mean, it's not about me. Like, so, like, yeah, I know you started your website. So, what in 2025? We got a couple days left. Like, what's going on with you? What do you see happening next year with the police chief and everything? Uh,
Oh, next year I'm gonna run over this police chief. This guy is just too old. He's just not ready for it. Like Michael Moore was savvy in some sense. I don't think Michael Moore was exactly the smartest guy,
mm,
but I think that he was really good at covering things up, and he understood, even if he wasn't good at social media. I think if you're a police chief, you can't be necessarily good at social media, but you can learn how to navigate it and learn how things are going to play out over social media. I don't think this guy, old man McDonald over here, I don't think he's gonna fare too well. So listen,
yeah,
I launched this website for a couple of different reasons. First off, like again, I have all these cases, these where you can't properly explain it on Twitter, right? You can't just put it, even with long tweets or in long threads, it just you can't show the misconduct and the cover up well through Twitter. So I felt it was important to do some long form articles. At first, I was like, okay, let me just do a medium. I'm like, nah, that kind of sucks actually. And I was like, let me just build a website. And listen, it's taken a while because I've had other things I had to do, and it's sort of mutated. It went from me just having some place written, having. It's funny. It was when speaking of LA Press Club. I remember it was two people kind of got my head going in this direction. Tony Pierce, during one of the podcasts we did a couple of years ago, he said, "Hey, you ever gonna write this stuff down?" In fact, he's the one who recommended Medium, and then I realized Medium sucks. And then Adam Rose from the LA Press Club, who
yeah,
runs the joint, he asked me if I have any of this stuff written down long form. I kind of like took it like hint, hint. And so, yeah, that was the whole purpose, is to really show these incidents in long form version, showing every step of the process from the initial encounter to the interview with the people at the scene who were victims or witnesses, discussions with the police officers at the scene, complaint filed, showing the process dealing with internal affairs and professional standards bureau, getting the final disposition, confronting the chief about it, confronting the inspector general about it,
mhm,
confronting the LAPD commission about it, and then showing. And listen, at the end of the day, these guys are all fucking corrupt, right? And the whole point is now by putting it in long form, I can show you just how corrupt it is. But along the way, I also was like, maybe should I start building out a roster on there of cops? I'm like, no, Watch the Watchers has that down pat,
mhm,
right? And they do a great job of it. The only what I wanted to do is just create my own Brady list. Brady list means, for those who don't know what a Brady list is, Brady versus Maryland essentially says that if a if the police or prosecutors have any evidence that could be helpful to a defense in their case, they have to provide it. And they don't often provide it. They don't provide it in the way that they should. So my whole point is I want to provide proactive disclosure to the public of cops that create this sort of misconduct, whether it be instances where I have filmed the misconduct myself, or just going through CPRAs, getting internal affairs documents and stuff, and then posting all that on there. So now I probably have like 120 cops' names on there now, but I have about 500 more to do. And that's just with the CPRA and the information I have now. There are an enormous amount of CPRAs that are in the work that we will be getting eventually. Right now, I just filed a lawsuit a few weeks ago, and
Oh,
there's I would imagine there's probably going to be 10 more to come, specifically about the CPRAs. The lawsuit that we filed have Shakir Rahman is the attorney on that, and a one Richie Sergienko. You may have heard of him from People
yes.
City Council. He's
Oh, yeah.
also my other attorney on that. And I expect to do more because I think that the CPRA process, for those who don't know, it's like California's version of Freedom of Information Act. It's a little bit different, but mostly the same. The LAPD just dismisses it. Like I can
Yeah.
file a CPRA and they can go years without filling it, even though they're supposed to do it within a few weeks. So those lawsuits are in the works. We're gonna get a lot more information for a lot more officer profiles. I don't think any of these cops look forward to having their face in a profile showing their misconduct to their friends and families or whatnot. And it'll all
Yeah.
be searchable. And not just them, not just trying to inform the public in the sense of embarrassing them with their friends and family, but
Mm.
also to provide information to defendants and defense attorneys so they can prepare for their case properly.
Yeah. Yeah. I've often reflected on that. It's every one of us. You're held accountable. We're all held accountable in our personal lives. We're held accountable at work, but yet there's this one job that basically that to me has always been the problem, where it's like even the slightest bit of accountability, there's this like a fit almost or something. It's like I, you're just being asked, you're given an enormous amount of power, and you should therefore be held enormously accountable, right? I mean, it's not complicated.
Listen, the
um
officers have the ability to take a person's freedom or their lives.
no,
And because of that, there should be extra diligence when it comes to making sure that there's accountability.
absolutely. um I'm curious about your you started this all started around 2020. Was that when you started cop watching? And
Yeah.
yeah, I've always you and I've been friends a long time, but I don't think I know the answer to this. What was your first cop watching video, and what was it like? The first.
First cop watching.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, the first one I think I posted online was one that happened on the corner of Sunset and Orange, right by the IHOP right there. I was actually walking to the bank to go get some cash. And usually I take back streets whenever I walk somewhere. I don't like to just walk down main streets for whatever reason. I just like being by myself. And I said, let me just walk down Sunset today. And I just happened to see this police stop happening. They had three, maybe four young kids pulled out of a SUV. They were up against so IHOP has outdoor seating and it's glassed in. And they had these kids up against the wall, up against the glass. People were eating right on the other side of that glass. They had them handcuffed facing the wall, facing the glass, while they searched them and searched their car. And I come to find out that the purpose of the stop was, or the reason for the stop was because the driver did not come to a complete stop at a stop sign, did a California roll. And listen, that's the type of stuff that you'd either get a ticket or you get a warning. It shouldn't lead to you being pulled out of the car, you being handcuffed, you being searched. All right. When you start escalating it to that point, you're violating the Constitution. Police have a right to pull everybody out of the car on any stop that they ever want to do. Period. They can. What they can't do is they can't from then go and search you without probable cause of a crime, right? That a crime had occurred or is occurring at that moment. So they didn't have the proper right to search them. And I was bothered by it. I was just watching this happen. I'm like, this is really fucking annoying. Cop's name on that stop was Escobar, and it turned into a years long fight between he and I. I won because his ass isn't in the LAPD anymore. I ran his ass out to Santa Ana, and he's down there probably violating people's rights. But yeah, that was the first I would say, major incident where I filmed. I filmed a stop or two before that. It was just basically motorcycle cop had somebody pulled over. I started filming. He looked at me like I was crazy. Like, what the hell are you doing? He'd never seen
Mm.
it happen before. And I did it. Not. I didn't think I was going to find something. I didn't think the person needed a whole lot of protecting on that stop. I did it because I wanted to show the public that they could do this too. So I stand by the street and be very visual with it, just to sort of break the ice, let people know that you can do this, and it kind of went from there.
Yeah, and a legend was born. Yeah, it's crazy. I don't do. I don't know if you remember, but do you remember the night that we met? Uh, it was a birthday party. Um, I I have a the reason I bring it up, man, is I've like a very fond memory of that night because that night I met people that I really admired, but many of them like I had not met. I never met you. I never met a bunch of people. There were researchers there. There were journalists, and I when things get I don't know what's going to happen next year. It's a crazy world, but I always look back on that particular night with a lot of fondness because it was like people kind of shared the same thing, which is that the world can be a better place, and I think about that quite a bit. Uh, and I don't know. I feel like that's what motivates you and I a
I
lot.
can't sit back and just watch things happen
Yeah.
passively. All right. I'm not going to sit back and be a victim. I'm not going to sit back and watch other people be victims also. So it's not even about the cops so much. It's like
Mhm.
I'm anti-bully. If I see somebody being mistreated, I have a hard time just sitting back and keeping my mouth shut. In fact, I can't. I
Yeah.
literally can't. I'll sit there and say to myself, "Oh, William, just calm down. Don't do it. Don't do it." Then the next thing you know, I'm just, the Hulk comes out.
Yeah, there's that meme with the Grim Reaper at each door, and I sometimes I think of that when I think of you a little bit, like who's who's going to next, like who's going to next make the mistake?
Who's
Who's
gonna be the
going to?
next? I mean, listen, they always end up making a mistake, and as far as I'm concerned, I'm undefeated, so I like these fights.
Yeah, I would agree. I can't think of any. I can't think of any losses. Yeah, it's been. I went to a. You brought up Richie Sergenko earlier, who, for those who are watching, Richie is now an attorney and a member of a People's City Council, which is an activist group. And so they held actually it was a session on what's called. I mean, I know you know all this stuff, but bird dogging, holding politicians accountable on camera. What I found fascinating was like everything. There's always I was just kind of like observing, and they were gracious enough to let me just kind of sit there. There's more to everything than people realize. Like they talked about. I know Richie talked about how sports, like trash talking, play into it, and I just found that so fascinating. I never would have thought that. Um, I don't know if sports are big for you and what you
I
do,
mean,
and if,
I
yeah.
mean, yeah, I mean, listen, I got to finish watching my Jets lose their 14th or 13th game, so or whatever, 12th game. So they're big, but not big for me right now. But it's funny you should mention that about Richie because I've been on quite a few actions with Richie.
Mm,
I've been on some that I felt were very successful. Confronting Mitch O'Farrell was important. It was Mitch. We saw him right after Nuri resigned from city council, and Mitch became city council president. And we did. He was also running for re-election, and we didn't really want. We want to put some pressure on him.
yeah,
And in the tapes, they referred to him as Nuri's boy, and we blew up his little press conference, community day thing that he was, his little PR thing that he was doing, and really hammered home that he was Nuri's boy. And lo and behold, he had to go onto the news that night to tell the news that he is not, in fact, Nuri's boy. And that's when you're explaining stuff like that, you're losing, right? And he
yeah.
lost the election. I'm not saying he lost because of us, but the look in his advisors' faces that day after we hammered him for a good hour or so, and one of his advisors stole my straw, which I want back. That's a long story. I don't know if you saw that. I was in there talking. The guy went and just took a straw out of my coffee for whatever reason. I'm like, why are you doing this?
What? That's
It was I'm gonna have to post that because it was kind of
yeah.
funny.
I, I
But
I feel like you just broke that, like right here. Yeah.
well, no, it was all over Twitter for a while. It was
Uh,
a we went and, I went and searched up the guy, found out he was a Disney actor at one time. Now he's just a loser working for Mitch, or he was working for Mitch because Mitch is unemployed. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's I actually was not aware of that story. There's I believe the phrase I've heard you use quite a bit is goofy, like something is a little goofy, and I feel like that's
Uh,
real.
that's highly goofy right there. It's highly goofy behavior. Yeah, what he was trying to do is honestly, so it was myself, it was Richie, and it was Jason Reedy.
Hmm,
Jason was there, he had his baby, and this guy kept on putting his hands on people. He was trying to bait people into fights.
yeah,
And I think he was trying to bait me into a fight by stealing the straw out of my coffee, thinking that I was going to overreact and then they can get the police there because the police station was only 2 blocks away. It just didn't work out, you know. As loud as I may be, I'm always in control. You're not going to
yeah,
bait me into overreacting.
yeah. There was a recent situation, so and I'm almost going to try to put the context because I know for people who are watching may not know all this stuff, but an individual who's now known, I try not to give people too much press, but if it is funny, like there's an individual who's now known as Crash Out Kyle,
Oh,
who, and the reason I bring this individual up who had some minor position at uh, a neighborhood council is because uh, he acted up. The reason I found this notable was that uh, I almost saw a look of surprise on your face when this guy started acting crazy because you were there to do something else, hold someone else accountable. And then, yeah, you want to just tell us about what happened in that
oh, with
situation?
crash out. I mean,
Yeah.
I was surprised more than anything because I was laughing. I thought it was so funny. I couldn't believe this guy was acting like such a fool. Listen, I I pay attention to when certain politicians are having public engagements, and I saw that Heidi Feldstein Soto was going to be having a public engagement about a week beforehand, and you know, I kept quiet about it, and I waited until the day came and kind of snuck up on her and confronted her, and I had to confront her about a few things. Confront her about her own corruption, that she's been or she tried to fire one of her respected prosecutors because the prosecutor had the nerve to question whether she was misusing her office against one Richie Serchienko, by the way, who
Yeah.
she was trying to have arrested for his activism, even though the LAPD told her that there is no case here, there was no crime, and even though the people in her office said there was no crime, she still wanted him prosecuted. I went there to confront her about it, and it was at a community day, and then Kyle, a member of the Palm, ex-member of the Palms Neighborhood Council, decided he wanted to be a hero and jump in and run interference for Heidi. It didn't quite work out for him. He just, you know, he really played himself. In the process, he ended up knocking over the president of the neighborhood council, a lovely lady who she's the one who's responsible for taking his ass out.
Oh,
So as of last week, he is no longer a member of the Palms neighborhood council. He took that loss, and that's where he's at. Doesn't mean I'm done with him. I'm not done with him. You
yeah.
know, he made a bunch of crazy allegations against me. I'm not going to forget about. I'm gonna punish him when the time comes. But yeah, no, he's gone.
Yeah. I try not to spend too much time on people like that, but I did. Last thing I saw, like, no joke, I'm telling you guys, like, this, you can't make this stuff up. But I don't know if you saw this, but the last thing I saw was he said he rented one of those. It's street legal, but I don't know. It's like it looks like a car, but like more like a race car. No joke, dude. Like I've seen him around in this neighborhood. They're these concept cars, and they are street legal. He rented it, and no joke, he said, "I'm driving to Mexico," and I was like, this guy's insane."
Good night. I hope he does. I hope he does. I hope he drives to Mexico. And I want him to drive to like the worst part of Mexico, flashing a lot of money, and whatever happens, happens, Kyle.
Yeah.
Listen,
No.
I enjoy helping people like Kyle crash out. You know, he deserved it. Because first off, he's a bigot for one,
Yeah.
so I have no problem taking him down. Two, again, like I said, he made up a bunch of lies about me, and look where he's at now. He's no longer has his position, and he's completely humiliated. And if you just Google Kyle McCauley
Yeah.
and look up his name, it's just full of web page after web page after web page showing him acting like a goddamn fool. So,
Yeah.
oh well,
Yeah.
Kyle.
Yeah. Oh, I want to. You're. Yeah, Kyle. I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Uh, it's like the security guard who launched, maybe shifting to a what I would describe now as a global movement to end the Church of Scientology, which started with a guy who told you to move off the sidewalk, right?
Oh yeah, he
I
told me
mean,
to move, and he said a few other things, and so I told him I was going to end his religion. Year later, they're in really bad shape. They're not doing too well, to the point where I don't even have to protest anymore. Their Christmas Winter Wonderland was just a shell operation. It wasn't to be taken seriously. You
uh,
saw what happened with the Christmas parade. It didn't go too well for them. They're an international joke. I can't walk down Hollywood Boulevard. Doesn't matter what time of day. I can't walk down Hollywood Boulevard without somebody coming up and saying, "Oh man, you guys destroyed that cult. Where are you visiting from?" "Oh, I'm visiting from Louisiana," or "I'm visiting from, wherever." And you hear that nonstop. The, I'm not saying that I myself or others in this protest were solely responsible for making the term "it's a cult" synonymous with Scientology, but we sure as hell, you know, m- had a big impact on that, to the point where when you ask this anybody, what is Scientology? I don't know. I just know it's a cult,
yeah,
and that's where they're at
that's incredible. So people literally stop you on the street and
every
uh,
day.
yeah,
Every day,
yeah, that,
every multiple times a day, every day. I can If I go walk down Hollywood Boulevard right now, I'm gonna hear something. So, I mean, that just tells you the impact that we had on them. The impact where they have stopped recruiting in Hollywood. They're not recruiting in Hollywood. Where how can they recruit? They can't show their face on a sidewalk because it doesn't have to be me. It'll be somebody else. Anybody walking by will recognize them and immediately start filming and talking about them. They're in a death spiral and there's no way out of it. So Scientology is going to go out of business without me.
uh,
We just help put a little fire on it and speed up the process. So, yeah.
I agree. I guess according to on Aaron Smith Levin's stream the other night, prominent anti-Scientologist that I know, of course, I think you've been on the show too. I guess apparently he got a hold of some dossier of their worst enemies, and I think you. I mean, I know you're in there, but he named me too, so I'm in there
Mhm.
too.
Yeah, I mean, listen, but they're goofy like that. They have
Yeah,
their enemies list. They have an 18 or 19-year-old girl who came to like two protests in there. It's like,
yeah,
focus, rather than focus on trying to create an enemies list, why don't you try to do some goodwill in the community and
mm,
create a goodwill list, right? Get people to like you guys rather than spending your time trying to trash people who are slightly critical. And I mean that, slightly critical
mm.
of your religion and multi-level marketing scam.
It is crazy. I mean, I reflect. So today I was walking around and I've been in that neighborhood for a long time. I'm always open about that. That the Scientology has a huge presence in my own neighborhood, and I just was reflecting on that. This criminal cult just has this presence, and you almost like there were times where I even forgot about it. It's just like, which is sad. It's like pathetic, but like the corruption, how they've been able to corrupt other institutions like police and whatever. So they just have this presence. It's like, wait a minute, like this is a dangerous criminal human trafficking cult that destroys people. It shouldn't just be. I shouldn't just walk past it with like no reaction. Um, but I
Yeah, I mean,
guess,
but
and
listen, I think they're trying to stay hidden at this point, though. That the power that they had, that's
yeah,
fleeting at this
yeah,
point, right? They had the power of, like, they had police. They could just call them up and the police would come to their rescue. They don't do that anymore. You can go protest. The cops aren't going to bother you anymore when they're not coming to Scientology's aid.
yeah,
I was in the CPAB meeting, the Community Policing Advisory Board meeting. They had Janet from Scientology in there. We show up, and she goes running out of there. They're not there to protect the Scientologists like they used to. On a
yeah,
city level, they're not there to protect the Scientologists the way they used to. And then when it comes to some of these outside groups, like I don't know what politician is going to put their neck on the line for the Scientologists at this point. No one.
Karen
Right? I
Bass.
wish Nithya or Hugo would. If they did, I mean, they would be toast. Karen Bass isn't gonna come
Yeah,
to the rescue. Nobody's gonna come to the rescue anymore. Those days are over. They got by on a reputation before and on love bombing politicians. Now, if you love bomb a politician, we find out about it, we're gonna put that politician through hell. So they don't want that. They don't even want that. And so, yeah, I mean, where do they go from here? Their power structures that they had before are gone.
yeah,
And now what? They're gonna just try to intimidate people? They don't
yeah.
intimidate anybody.
No, on that note, so I got a I guess it was like a couple weeks ago. So I got this other threat from this clown named, I guess, Tony D'Amato, who's now about to be indicted.
Oh no, he's
Uh,
indicted. No, I mean,
oh, he's indicted. Cool.
well, listen, he's been charged with 26 crimes. 22 crimes are violating a restraining order from a child who got a restraining order because he was sexually harassing this child and the child's mother and family. So he has 22 counts of violating a restraining order, 2 counts of cruelty to a child, and 2 counts of stalking. Those are the types of charges. Like I said, they applied for the warrant on the 17th of December and they got it on the 19th. It was issued. So there's a warrant for his arrest.
Oh,
He talks a lot of shit about how he'll beat the charges. These charges are literally just based upon his own videos.
yeah,
Videos that the city attorney got the videos, saw the videos, and said, "Oh yeah, we're going to charge him now." What are you going to do? Are you going to say that's not you on the video making those threats?
yeah.
So yeah, no, he's in a bad place. This is a guy who's he's paid for by the Church of Scientology, the CCHR, the Citizens Commission on Human whatever,
Human
blah blah
rights.
blah.
Yeah,
Their anti-psychiatry wing. They have their building on Sunset between, I guess that would be between, like, I don't know, Cherokee and
yeah.
Schrader.
Mhm.
And so yeah, he's getting paid by them for now. I don't know if they'll pay for him anymore. Now it's been exposed that he's getting paid by them. But this guy who's he's harassed a bunch of people, and
Yeah,
anybody who was actually like bothered by it, like, other than the child who was involved,
yeah,
any grown up who was bothered by it, he's just you don't let that guy win. He's just he's a loser and a nobody, and he's going to be going to jail.
yeah,
And I got to tell you, how do you think charges like stalking a child and child cruelty are going to play in jail? Yeah,
yeah, yeah. No, I
it's gonna be a
I
lot
didn't
of
even
fun
know
for
who.
him.
I mean, they call it FAFO, I guess. I mean, fuck around, find out. I didn't even know who that was. I was like, and because when I had posted some public court documents from when I had broken a story that some of the UCLA attackers had been indicted. And then I followed up anyway. I posted the documents so people could read it because that's important to me. And then I see this weeks later, uh, this comment on my Twitter, on X or whatever Twitter. It was like it was definitely a threat. It was just like it was a couple like don't do that, or it was something a little mildly worse than that. But I'm like, who is? And I'm like, oh, it's that guy.
And
That's
he
how
talks.
little. Yeah,
Listen, the guy has been around. He's had a YouTube for like okay. Imagine if you were on YouTube every day, hours a day, every single day for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and yet you only get to 7,000 subscribers. Something's not going well, right? Maybe you find something. He's not making money from it, yet he's spending all his time on there. So he doesn't have an audience. He's not building an audience. But how is he able to, without, while he has a demonetized account that I
yeah,
got rid of because he used to be monetized, but put in enough complaints and got him demonetized. But how is he able to survive? That was Church of Scientology money paying for all of his antics. And his whole goal is, if you protest the Church of Scientology in any way, then he is going to come and attack you. I would say to the average person, that guy no mind. He's a loser. The guy is a straight up loser. He's a Scientologist, documented Scientologist. There's paperwork that shows he had taken Scientology courses, but
mm,
now he's getting paid for them by them just to attack people because, and again, attacking children, sexually
yeah,
harassing children on behalf of the Church of Scientology. Never forget that the Church of Scientology pays people to attack children because they're deviants like that.
yeah. And for those who are watching, what William's referring to is I have him. So Aaron Smith Levin, I guess, spoke with a source that he trusts that gave him what I would describe as very interesting information uh, about that. Basically, like they're paying this guy. I personally haven't substantiated that, but Aaron I think is a reliable guy, and I'm
Yeah,
sure you have your sources
he's
too.
solid.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. He wouldn't put it, and I was thinking about it too, man. Not only do I think he wouldn't put it out there if he didn't 100% believe it, but I know you've noticed this. That church, the Scientology hasn't said anything about that allegation.
No, I haven't.
No, nothing.
Nothing.
Uh,
And they better
um,
not. They better keep their mouths quiet because I've been hibernating over here doing my other stuff, right? It's like I'm not necessarily motivated to go out there. and protest the Church of Scientology because there's not much to protest. What am I going to do? Go to a test center?
Yeah.
Test center's closed, right? Or at
Yeah.
least it's closed when I come walking by. They open the door, but they're not outside recruiting. And in the blue building, I also always felt like the blue building, I don't even know the point of protesting the blue building. That's for other people to do.
Mhm.
Perfectly fine with it doing. I'm not doing it because I'm not
Mhm.
stopping recruiting. I'm not hurting their money by protesting it. But if I see them out opening, something up again, I'll, in a heartbeat, be out there protesting. But I mean, that CCHR building is right around a block from me. I might
Mhm.
put a little time in over there protesting them. I actually emailed the guy who was supposed to be Tony's contact. I found his email with the CCHR,
Mm.
emailed him asking him for comment, and he hasn't replied yet. So I have to send him another one asking about these envelope payments.
That's extremely telling because if somebody said something about me that I was taking cash to, I'd fire back quick. And I think
Yeah,
the answer might, yeah, right.
yeah. Listen,
Uh,
they know. They don't know.
yeah.
Do they want? If they open their mouths, is okay. If they open their mouths, then it's just going to motivate me to come after them. Right now, I'm not terribly motivated. Right now, I have other things I'm focusing on. I focused on them for a year, put a lot of time into it. They should have shut their fucking mouths. But if they say one word, then I'll be right back in there, right in front of CCHR, making sure nobody walks into that building. And listen, you know how it goes. It'll start with me, and the next thing you know, it'll be 20, 30 people out there.
Mhm.
So they want that. They should keep their mouth shut.
Yeah. It's a very, that place is, many things about Scientology are sad and destructive, but that place to me is like very particularly offensive. Like when you think about how psychiatry and mental health has helped so many people get over, live a better life, and that they have this filth, because that's what it is. It's filth. It's a museum of filth out there to hurt people just because one man had, L. Ron Hubbard needed some serious mental help, and that didn't work out. But then all these other people have to suffer. It's like it's really pathetic,
I
actually.
tried taking a tour of that place a few months ago, and they were about to give us a tour, and then next thing you know, the phone rang, and then they told us to come back the next day. So the gig is
Yeah,
up.
it's hard for you to yeah, you're I think you're number one. You're probably number one up there now.
I mean, maybe.
The, William, do not let this man near the hey, but public sidewalk, baby.
Oh, I mean, a public sidewalk, there's nothing they can do, so I'll stand in front of that door. If I'm walking by, I see that door open, I always have a few words to say to them, and they close the door. But honestly, you don't really get much traffic in that place anyway, so
Mm.
that's why I've always sort of ignored it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's 2025. I think is going to be. Yeah, man. I'm kind of sad about President Carter. That's he was a good man, and I just like yeah, it's too bad. Of course, no one. The man lived to 100 and accomplished more than most people ever will. Um, I do think about next year. I wonder. I kind of like, I do think. I'll say this. I feel like for people like me and you, we kind of like do our own thing. We don't really like groups. And after the election, a lot of people were very upset with the results, and not that I was happy with it, but I also feel like the next day I just got up and did the same thing. I'm gonna hold people. I'm gonna do my thing, hold people accountable. You're gonna do that. I feel like you and I are like self-moving. We're like we marched our own drummer is what I'm trying to say. Uh,
Yeah.
Not that I'm sure you were happy to see that Trump got another 4 years, but
But nothing changes for me, man. I have my
right.
mission that I'm on. I have the things that are important to me, and I'm not going to stop until I'm done and I win them. And I'm going to win them eventually, always. So yeah, no, I stay focused on what I'm doing. Nothing changes for me.
Yeah, and that's good. I think that's leadership. I think people, especially now, they need that because people were pretty bummed out last in November. Um, I know we talked about the website. And we talked about the next police chief. Is there anything else you have planned in 2025, or something people might not know, or some just you've been want a passion project?
Oh no, I have some stuff planned coming up really soon. That
Uh,
things I cannot say right now until right beforehand. But I mean,
yeah,
there's
I
some
got.
political stuff got planned, so we'll
Oh,
see.
tell you. You can tell your favorite reporter offline.
Offline.
Um, I was thinking you talked about your first cop watching video, so I was thinking about my first solo byline, my first story, which was when the White House press secretary at the time, Kelly McEnany, her parents got a big PPP loan. And that was my very first story. I'd never written any journalism by myself. It went so viral that, yeah, it's around the same time as you were launching your a new, what would become a big thing. I was launching something, and I never imagined that I would even do something like that. And that went so, I learned a lot. That went so viral. I was like, wow, like people,
over the PvP
this,
stuff, huh?
the,
So you want to hear some? I'll give you an interesting story about
yeah.
PPP, right? So in I guess it would have been maybe February, March 2020 is when COVID was. You sense that things are going to get shut down, but people were unsure yet. And people that know me know that I own a financial services company, and I had some lobbyists reach out to me from that were working with, believe it or not, Marco Rubio down in Florida, and they said, "Hey, they're about to launch a program to rescue small business, and we want to get your input on it." And they actually sent me a draft of their proposal. And I got to tell you, I looked at that draft, and in the the way the PPP loans were structured, were totally different than
Mm,
how it ended up being. So the way they originally wanted to do it is they wanted to structure it through the SBA 7A process and essentially just give out people SBA interest-free SBA loans that could be underwritten and provided within just days because they were going to use the SBA Express program for underwriting, which you can usually have a turnaround of 48 to 72 hours. And they asked me my view on it. I'm like, this is actually brilliant. This is
mm,
this is going to save a lot of these little small shops, these pizza shops and barber shops and whatever else, and manufacturing companies and things like that. And I was thrilled about it.
mhm,
And then I saw it go through the process, and it went through the process, and it went through to they finally passed it. By the time they passed it, it was a joke. I'm like, okay, this is a fucking scam. This is
mm,
truly a scam. And then it wasn't just that they passed it. Then after that, then it had to go through Treasury, and Treasury has to interpret it and give their own interpretation of it. And their interpretation of it is everybody qualifies for it if you're some way affected by COVID, whether in a good way or a bad way. All you have to do is say I'm affected, and we're just going to give you like all these companies free money with no checks. And I was like, this is crazy, right? So I had actually written a story about PPP and posted on my company's website, and it
mm,
became the top thing when you search for PPP loans when it went into effect. And my company was completely overwhelmed. We were getting 1,000 phone calls an hour, couldn't keep up with it. On top of it, we had no guidance on how to actually handle the program because we do the brokering services for this, and we had no guidance. People were calling the SBA saying, "Hey, how do we get a PPP loan?" They were saying, "Call my company to find out." Like, what the fuck? What are we gonna do? We have no idea what's going on. So we were completely overwhelmed. And then I started the process of, doing some of the underwriting on these PPPs. And I just saw a scam that it was. It was essentially, it was up to the banks to give them. The banks were only going to give PPP loans to existing clients who already have loans. They don't want
mhm,
to see their loans default, so they want to go ahead and get these PPPs to help them out. But at the same time, I was watching these companies saying, "Yeah, I took out a PPP loan. I want to get another one." And I'm like, "That's completely illegal, first off."
mm,
And they're like, "Yeah, but nobody's ever going to know." I'm like, "Okay, I'm out of this game. I want nothing to do." People are going to go to jail over this shit. But we completely shut down. We wanted nothing to do with it. And in the end, really, no one went to jail over it. People became kind of rich off of the
mhm,
scam, and it was disgusting. But long story short, the program started out. It was the concept of it at first was fantastic. Before that administration and Congress got involved and turned it into a nasty slush fund.
yeah. Yeah. There's no question that I think it was likely. I mean, there was another, man, it was a huge story the other day where I, I, I think as Business Insider found another aspect of the CARES Act, which for those listening was the parent of all that. I never even heard of this. This was to help touring musicians specifically. This thing, I almost you want to talk about getting angry. I I was reading about how they stole this is straight fraud. Like this wasn't even the reporter was a little careful because sometimes like that's another conversation about how sometimes yes, you have to be careful in this job, but sometimes you can just say it like it is. It's fraud. Like they had these huge bands who just these are huge name, the biggest people in music who just stole our money. Like
Yeah.
right.
Listen, and just PPP in general, right? You can go ahead and look up some of these addresses. I know a specific address on Sunset in East Hollywood. It must have had like 30 businesses that were getting PPP loans to an individual address that was essentially just, it was an empty business. It was a shell. And so, yeah, we put trillions of dollars into it. If you think about it, we had PPP, we had EDD, we had those
Mhm.
rescue efforts, right?
Yeah.
And listen, was there fraud in EDD? Sure, right? I don't feel bad about regular people getting a cash infusion to help them
Yeah.
deal with everything while the pandemic's closed down. So I'm not gonna get too angry about that. I'm more angry about the PPP and the trillions of we call it stimulus that was put into the system, right? And then afterwards, we dump $5 trillion into the economy, and then we're wondered, well, why do we have inflation? Well, that leads to inflation, guys. When you just print off $5 trillion, put it into the economy, you're going to have massive inflation. That's going to come with it. It's to be expected. And so, yeah, listen, man, I just look back at that whole time and like, people became filthy rich off of scamming the government, and the way that the law was written, really no one could be held accountable. No one, because it's not technically fraud.
Yeah. Yeah. When I remember because I wrote so much about it, I remember when it came out, and they were trying to hide it really badly, and then a bunch of journalist organizations sued them. They won, and then I remember so they released the data. First, it was these Excel spreadsheets, which was impossible to understand, and thank God ProPublica put it into that database, right? That I know you've used and I've used.
Super helpful.
Um, and man, I mean, I, I will say PPP benefited me in one way because I wrote my career really took off because like those 3 stories I wrote about the Scientology loans when
Yeah.
that first one was global, it was awesome. Um, in fact, me being the bragging type, sometimes you can't see it, but over there is the 2 page. The only in about 5 years of reporting and people who get very angry, as they people get very upset sometimes. The only organization to write me or person or whatever to write me a 2 page letter is the Church of Scientology.
Oh
To,
God.
no
Not
one's
the
ever done it.
strongly worded letter. Not the.
It's right over there.
Uh,
It's framed from
they don't
Karen.
write me
I
any
think
letters. I ain't gonna
they're
leave
afraid
me
of you.
out. I like a letter every now and then. Come on
It,
now, guys.
it's and it has the tone of a very disappointed parent. That was the other thing. It was like
Huh.
Mr. LeVay, Mr. LeVay. Hey, like I'm like, hey, this is the data. You guys deal with the fallout. Um, I, I was proud of SPTV. If you want to throw the links in there for people who haven't read it, the 3 stories I did on the PPP loans, and then maybe we can take a few questions and then we'll wrap this up. But yeah, that
It's
was
kind of
yeah.
I gotta tell you, I'm not the fact that the Church of Scientology is getting PPP loans. Here they are. They don't pay taxes. They just milk the system, and then
Yeah.
they milk it to how much did they get out of PPP?
Uh, the third story when I totaled it up, the last number I had, I think, sorry, it's been a while, but I think I had it up to almost 100 different loans. 10 million is your answer. 10 million.
And so the way PPP is supposed to go towards employee payroll, utilities. Wow, were they using it on mortgage? And because part of it is you could use on the interest on your mortgage. And
Mm,
do they I just assume that they bought property straight up with cash. But if imagine if there's a mortgage and they were writing off their interest using PPP loans, and of course the utilities they were
yeah.
paying off, but their employees, how are these employees paid that they were? Because they don't pay their employees, they give them allowances.
It's a great question, and And the fact that was the first time that I ever talked to Aaron Smith Levin. I think I sent him a DM, uh, and we had a little conversation because I was literally looking for that. No matter who it is, you know me, I'm always going to be fair. Um, they had the right to apply for those loans, but I wanted to find out what did this go
Yeah.
towards, and so we had a conversation. But yeah, that's the problem is that without an insider leak, I tried to get the stuff from the Small Business Administration. They refused. Without an insider leak, you don't know where the money really went. Because you would need, I think even that form, you probably know better than me, but there was a form after it's all over when you have to tell the SBA, hey, I used it for this. And that form was kind of short. Like it wasn't,
Yeah.
it was,
It should have been justified differently. They should
right.
have, first off, if the whole purpose was you get the money so you don't have to lay off an employee, right? You have to keep them employed for, I think, 20 weeks or whatever. I can't remember what
Yeah.
the exact amount of time was. That should be associated with a social security number to
Mm,
justify it. And that way they can't just make up fraudulent numbers, because I'm sure they did. I'm
yeah.
positive they did. I'm wondering how many actual like civilian employees do they have that they pay, normal wages, whether it be minimum wage or
Mm,
whatnot. I can't imagine there are many. I imagine a lot of this stuff is just made up bullshit. And
yeah.
because of the way it was structured, the PPP, you can get away with it. But yeah, it should have been tied to individual social security numbers one by one to make and having to prove it, but they didn't have to.
Yeah, the people. I mean, almost every politician is incredibly, or many politicians are very corrupt. I'll be fair. We had a few like Carter who were not like that, but that's uh, I just totally lost my train of thought there. But there was, I remember it was Mnuchin at the time. It was a very corrupt
Worst,
administration. Yeah.
worst.
Um,
He's the one who fucked up PPP.
mhm.
Listen, we're going to go into the weeds a little bit here, but
Yeah.
PPP screwed things up in ways people didn't even realize.
Oh,
The SBA loans, whether it's SBA 7A, 7A Express, to a smaller extent 504 loans, are hugely important. It's a way to get a good, high quality loan at a really good interest rate for companies that would normally, companies that are normally bankable,
yeah.
but for one reason or another, banks don't want to actually
Yeah.
take any risk on them. So SBA comes in and says, "Listen, you give out the loan to them, and we will backstop. We'll backstop it. If they default on a loan, we will pay you 95% of whatever the loan amount is." And the banks are like, "Okay, cool. So we'll give out loans to people who, maybe, they have to have a minimum credit score, but maybe just like on the lower end, or maybe their debt service coverage ratio isn't exactly the greatest." It gives them a chance to get it, and it's super helpful for small
Mhm.
businesses. Well, because of the PPP loan, all the banks were forced to shift their underwriting from SBA loans to PPP loans. So essentially, for a year, you couldn't even really get an SBA loan because the banks are like, "No, we're not doing them right now. Where all of our underwriting is focused on PPP." So the companies that really needed help were not getting it. The only people who were getting PPP loans were companies that were really well connected with really good relationships with their existing banks. Anybody else, you were kind of screwed. So it's not just that there was fraud going on, but it delayed help for companies that really needed it through using the existing really good programs, like I said, the SBA 7A, 7A Express.
Yeah, yeah. So many people needed those loans and just couldn't get them. It's because, like you said, they did business with people who were famous or people they had a relationship with. Uh, I was never even totally clear. Maybe you can answer this, but I was never clear on what the bank. I don't know what the right phrase is, but like what what were they getting out of it? I mean, besides making somebody
They
happy.
get it. So they didn't get a ton of money. So the banks wanted nothing to do with this
Yeah.
program. They hated the idea of the
Mm,
PP. They liked the idea of, running everything through a 7A program because their underwriters are built for that, right? Their underwriters not built for a PPP. It's a totally different program. And but they would get, they would get for every. Okay, so the way it was originally marketed to them before Mnuchin fucked over everything is the banks would originate the loan, the PPP loan, and then the Treasury would buy the loans like 3, 4 weeks later off of them. So they'd use, because the banks are, listen, they underwrite loans. They're very fast. We can't just hire 10,000 people to start underwriting these loans off the street. They don't know how to do it. So you use the existing infrastructure, have the banks underwrite it, and then Treasury would come in and buy the loans. But then they told the banks, actually, we're not going to buy the loans. You're going to have to keep them on your books. And so the banks are like, fuck this. We want nothing to do with it. Then for the first year, banks were only, like I said, they were only giving out PPP loans to existing clients who had, say, a commercial real estate loan. They had a $5 million loan on their factory, and they're afraid that they're going to default on their loan. So what's the best thing you can do to help to make sure they don't default? Get them a PPP loan for $400,000 in cash, and now they can continue paying us back. So they were only originating their own customers. So if you were, the barber shop over there in the corner, or the nail salon, or whatever, if you didn't have an existing loan relationship with a bank, you weren't getting a PPP loan for the first year. So those guys, they were going out of business, and they never came back. A lot of those businesses, those small ones, those went out of business and never came back. The ones that were able to stick around were the ones, like I said, who had those existing banking relationships, had debt that they owed to the banks, and the banks said, okay, we got to secure this debt by making sure they have an influx of cash right now so they can continue paying their mortgages and whatever debt they have to us. So that was what was in it to them, protecting their own ass. And then after that, they started getting a small fee, for every, I don't know, $100,000, they would get like $2,000, $3,000 off of it. But long story short, the banks never cared for it. The banks weren't originating, and Congress was yelling at the banks, you need to start originating them. You need to start originating them, and force them to.
Yeah.
And I'm not one to defend the banks. I work in finance, but listen, a lot of these guys are some sleazy motherfuckers, right? Listen, I worked around a lot of guys, some guys who went to jail over some really dirty shit in finance that Trump went and pardoned them leaving office last time, and they're back in the game. You look at places like, if you ever do a deep dive, you could just search for Yellowstone and see what comes up in the business financing space for them. The shittiest business there is basically a mafia run joint, and they milked the system, and you had people like Mnuchin who was encouraging this stuff, and we ended up where we're at. It was not that PPP wasn't necessary, but it was a huge fleecing of trillions of dollars.
It's just unbelievable. There's a book I often think of. It's called Moneyland, and it's by, I think his name is Oliver Bullitt. It's basically like a book about money laundering and how it works. And he uses an example of a hospital in Ukraine, but I always think of that book when I think of what you just told me, because like the effects of corruption sometimes are in a way invisible. Like we don't see the hospital that would have been built here, or the whatever would have, because the money was gone. It's an invisible kind of thing, and that's how these people get away with it. It's not. We don't see the road that would have been fixed that caused the accident that killed the father. It's like, this is
If it was done right, this program would have been so helpful, and we wouldn't have the inflation issues that we have right now. Like, again, if you take, this is just basic, economics and finance. If you increase the amount of money that's in the system floating around, right, it's going to have effect on prices. Prices that you're going to have, it's going to get superheated and stuff, and prices are going to skyrocket until things are adjusted. So again, we're dealing with inflation now that was directly related to that. We can talk about whichever president's policies created inflation. The inflation was created because of PPP and EDD. It was just, and not just that. There were other Federal Reserve actions that were taken that flooded the system, the money supply. But if we had done it right, there would have actually been less into the system. There would have been less fraud, less money floating around, and we'd have had more tools at our disposal to address inflation. But here we are.
Yeah, here we are. It must feel. I know a lot of times when people interview you, they want to talk about cop watching and other things. So it's good that we can have like a discussion about some other interesting stuff.
I mean, pre-2020, I used to always do, interviews with financial companies, with Bloomberg and stuff,
Cool.
and then became cop watching. So
Oh shoot, I want
yeah, I
to
did.
see the, I want to see that.
Oh yeah, no, I had some good stuff.
Yeah, we want to see William in the suit doing the Bloomberg, the financial interviews. I want to see that. Um, I think I'm gonna. I don't know. I don't know if we can start some questions. Otherwise, we're gonna wrap this up because uh, it's been a great interview, and I don't want to mess up the flow. I'll take a quick look. Yeah, this will probably just mess up my flow here. So, if you SPTV, if you're watching, you could throw it in the if you want to storm, go ahead. Otherwise, I don't know any last words, thoughts, communications, feelings.
No, I mean, just like I said, I got some things planned. Some I have some things planned.
Mm.
I'm thinking about a hostile takeover of one political branch, one,
Oh yeah, I
and
know what you're talking about. Okay,
well,
I like.
that's just fun. That's just to prove a point to somebody. But then
Yeah.
there's some other stuff I'm thinking about. Um, and yeah, I expect this year I'm really going to hammer the LAPD because they're going to have a hard time. This is culmination of a years long process showing the just the general misconduct and how things are handled. You know, I have a million cases to focus on. Just talk about one real quickly. This guy Philip Ruiz is a senior lead officer in the Mission Division. This is a guy who, I was going through his file. I found he had been suspended because he had domestic violence, stalking, sound like a whole lot like sexual assault to this one lady. His
Mm.
ex-girlfriend pulled her off the bed by her hair, roughed her up. She broke up with him. He started following her around, snuck into her office, was in her office, going through her stuff, followed her and her boyfriend to a concert. And when she went to go to the bathroom, he went and was waiting for her and grabbed her by the arm and grabbed her by the crotch, called her a hoe, told her that he was going to kill her and her boyfriend. And I was like, and he became senior lead officer, right? He got
Mm.
suspended, but then you kept him as a cop, become senior lead officer, and then just I think 2 or 3 days ago, I was going through the file. I found another instance where he had been suspended previously for domestic violence, and I just thought that the LAPD's the language they used in the paperwork was they didn't fire him because they didn't think that it was a pattern of behavior because he did it against the same woman multiple times. So
Mm.
therefore it's not a pattern, which is just absolutely fucking insane.
Jesus,
Like what type of sick stuff is this? And
that's sick.
again, it comes back to LAPD talks about how they have a problem recruiting people because they had to give
Mm.
them more money. And lately they've been saying the new chief says that to make it easier to recruit people, we're going to make the discipline process more fair for cops because it's unfair for them right now. And that's just the wrong approach. When you look at they have a math problem.
Mm.
52% of the population are women,
Yeah.
but only 20% of the police force. There's your problem. There's your fix. Fix your problem with women, and you'll have less of a recruiting problem. So my goal for this year is to hammer that even more and make sure that the recruiting problems get worse and worse, simply by showing how poorly, not just how bad the LAPD is run and how they don't take things seriously, but how bad their women problem
Yeah.
is, how bad that they treat women. If you are a female cop and you are sexually harassed, the LAPD and LAPD union is going to take your harasser side, and they're never going to come to your defense, women. So I want to make sure that I hammer that home this year, because I don't want to. I don't. Listen. Do we need more cops on the street? Karen Bass is running around saying crime is at an all-time low. Okay, you did that with fewer
Mm.
cops. So then why do you need more? So my goal this year is to make sure that they do not hire more cops.
Yeah, I part of my work, like as you know, but for other people, like so, not just journalism, but especially when I worked at a nonprofit, my investigative work led to prosecutions and people going to jail, and that's law enforcement was involved in that. I made referrals; some of them went to the FBI and things like that for very bad people, and and I'm not the one who knocks on the door. They do. There's some courageous people. I'm not. I would never say that there aren't. The reason I'm bringing all this up is, and I know you've been fair. You've even written commendations for
I have
as I
written
recall.
commendation for cops.
You know, both of us, I think, I've met some pretty courageous cops who've worked on some of the neo-Nazi issues and stuff that the spaces I've worked in, who really, you know, cared about the problem. Bringing it back, my issue is, it's always is, what are we getting for this money? I'm not saying we don't need, but how much of it is the budget, the LEP of ours?
The LAPD's, but what is their total budget?
Like
Or
the
what
percentage of our, of what we,
percentage of our discretionary budget is
yes,
48.4%.
right,
And growing, because remember, that's after last year, and they got $100 million or nearly $100 million increase, which is outrageous. But now
right,
they're asking for a $250 million increase. And at the same time, they're cutting street services, cutting Department of Aging services. They're
right.
cutting street lighting. They're cutting sanitation.
Mhm,
Cutting firefighters. They're cutting animal services.
mhm,
We're defunding our city. While
right,
they get larger and larger portion of the share. I don't know. Listen, you walk around my neighborhood in Hollywood right now, it's
right,
unrecognizable to me. It's a
mm,
disaster. It's a mess. There's garbage everywhere, and it never gets picked up. It's nobody ever comes down the street and cleans it. All the sidewalks are
right,
falling apart. People
right,
trip on them, and but lo and behold, we're our budget. Part of the reason why it's getting so screwed up is because of lawsuits.
yeah,
Lawsuits because that are of LAPD actions, but also
mhm,
because our streets are broken and people are
right,
tripping and breaking ankles, and we're getting sued because of that. Rather than spend $3 million because somebody broke their legs, settling a lawsuit, why don't we spend $20,000 and fix the goddamn sidewalks, up and down that street? But yeah, they get way too big of a share.
That's exactly right. What the public needs to ask. And I especially thought, like, I don't know, I haven't heard from him for a while, maybe, but there was a time where the new controller, Kenneth Mejia, I thought was really bringing that to the forefront.
He's doing
You
a
know,
fantastic job of it
oh,
still.
good. Yeah.
No, he is. Listen, without him, if he
Mm,
weren't here, we would have no idea what the costs are for all these things. So,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, listen, it's you got to understand, when we take money away from street services and other programs, youth development and stuff. What's that going to do? All this stuff is going to lead to just like a lower standard of living, which actually will end up leading to more crime. So we take money away from things that can help reduce crime, give it to the police. Then we end up having more crime, and they say, "Oh, we got to hire more cops again, so we got to cut somewhere else." And so at that point, you're in a death spiral. And I
Mhm.
feel right now we're really close to that point.
Yeah. And in some cities, like I've seen this more, I thought this city was crazy, but then I look at my friends in New York and I'm like, I mean, I know
Oh,
you're, both of us are from the East, I'm from New Jersey, and I know you're, uh, the reason I bring that up, because I'm like, when I see some of the stuff that happens with okay, first of all, every person in New York leadership now is going to prison. Like Eric
yeah.
Adams it's that is amazing. I'm not surprised, but it's amazing.
I always say the stuff that I do out here,
Yeah.
I couldn't do in New York. I had my ass kicked a million times. They like my cop watching that I can get away with out here.
Hmm.
I could not get away with it in New York. Absolutely could not.
Yeah.
Because they're that corrupt, and then you have a true cop running the city, a true
Hmm.
police supremacist running the damn city, and of course,
Hmm.
lo and behold, he's a criminal too, right? Come to find out. But listen, they shut down libraries to give cops
Yeah.
more money. What are we doing here? What are we doing here?
Not only is he a criminal, and he's also, I know you, because you have a great sense of humor. He's also so weird. That's when the
Yeah,
underexplored. Like,
he's
remember when
goofy.
he's good?
He's
He's real. First stop Istanbul. That's one of the greatest quotes of Palat. I don't know if you remember that. Yeah.
yeah.
First stop is because he made all, for those listening, he made all his people fly through Istanbul, no matter where they were. First stop Istanbul, because that's part of the corruption that he's now likely going to prison for. It's
It's
just
outrageous
hilarious.
that they didn't make him step down.
Yeah.
Honestly, if Karen Bass had all this happen, I don't see her surviving here. She would have to step down. Why?
No.
It's part of me is like, what's wrong with you people in New York? I'm from New York, so what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Why are you allowing this guy to stay here? Get him the fuck out of office. You put the pressure on him.
He's perp walking Luigi
I saw
Mangione. I That's a whole other discussion. I mean, we could talk about that all day, but like, I'm like, this guy's under indictment. What?
some nerve, some nerve.
That's the phrase I was looking for. That's nerve.
Yeah.
That's
True nerve.
Like when I make the smallest mistake, I beat myself up. You know, I don't want to talk. Like I'm like hiding this. Come on. What?
New
That's
Yorkers, you
goofy.
guys got to do better. You guys are allowing this. You know, at the end of the day, people do this stuff. Politicians
Yeah.
do this stuff because people allow them. People maybe they feel apathetic, like, oh, what can I do? What I don't know. Maybe I'm so full of myself. Maybe because I just feel like if it was me, I would just find a way to just
Yeah.
you know through just willpower, just find a way to. If I just sit in front of that house protesting by myself, I'll do it. People should just stand up, get him the fuck out of there. He has no business being mayor. None. Who would have thought after De Blasio that it would get worse? That's the funniest thing. Like people were so happy to see him gone. Now you think, okay, it's just that weird guy who eats pizza from the back. You know, just eats the crust first for like a
Yeah.
weirdo.
Yeah. Nobody knows where he lives. When he ran, that was a big thing. Like where he wouldn't tell people where he lived. It was like, you're going to be mayor of this city. Like these are
Yeah, because
easy
he lives in
questions.
Jersey.
Yeah. You know, remember that viral video where he was like, this is how you search your kid's house for drugs. It was like, dude, you what? You just got indicted.
Yeah, some nerve.
Yeah, it's not, I guess not much. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I got, unless there's something else, I feel like I'm going to bag the questions because I don't see any and I don't want to mess up the flow. So unless there's something else you got, I'm going to wrap this up.
Can't think of anything.
Yeah, no, it's, you know, I'll just say that, this is how I'm going to end this particular interview. And I want to say, I'm going to read everyone's comments later, because I'm easily distracted. I had the chat closed. I want to thank people. Obviously, I want to thank William for taking some of his, you know, his precious time. He's a very busy guy to talk to us. When I was a kid, I mean, it might have been in reruns, but my favorite show, one of my favorite shows, was the David Hasselhoff show. It was Knight Rider. You know, it was a talking car, and you don't realize sometimes when you're a kid how some of these things filter in and stay with you. But the line in the opening, they said, one man can make a difference. And when I look at you, that's what I see. And maybe me too, but especially you, like one man can make a difference.
I appreciate that, man.
Yeah, man.
Doing my best.
And,
I believe that though. Listen,
no.
listen. I truly believe that. I try to tell other people that. I say, you know what, just look what I'm doing. You don't have to do it the same way I do things. Do it your own way. Do your own causes and stuff. But just, you know, one person. You don't have to do it all on your own. All you have to do is be that one person that will inspire other people, right? If it was just me out in front of the Scientology building, I couldn't have made but so much, you know, headway. It required me doing it and people being like, oh man, that looks kind of fun. I want to do that too. And next thing you know, it's 5 people and 10 people and 50 people and 100 people. So sometimes it just takes that one person in a room speaking up where other people wanted to speak up, but they just didn't know how to. They didn't know how to break the ice. Break the ice for them, and you'd be surprised how many other people will follow along.
Yeah. And I learned if you get mad enough, that's how I got on this journey. I worked in Hollywood. I was a comedy writer. I had a different life. And then I told people this story. I'll just tell one more time. Like they talk about what radicalized you. The thing that changed the course of my life, and I do want to get back to those things because I am creative. You know, y'all saw me playing guitar on stage with Laura FM, so you know I love to play guitar. You know, I like, as you once said in a the thing I need to clip because it was so good when you kind of pump me up a little bit in that when that one. He's talented. He plays guitar. I'm not even going to go into that, but it's a great moment. One a great video. That's a longer story. Those watching probably know what I'm talking about, but damn, see, now I lost my damn train of thought again.
Now you were talking about just being one person and how you started off and
right. Thank you. What radicalized you? It was when Trump made fun of a disabled man, Serge Kovaleski when he mocked him for having a disability. I was never the same after that, but not in a bad way. It pushed me into this what I'm doing now, because that's how angry I was. Yeah, I just wanted to put that out there. It was that moment. Never the same, but maybe that's better. Maybe I'm a better person for it.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to, everybody needs some fights, and you got to have those fights. I don't know what I'd do if I didn't have fights. I'm gonna go outside now and go for a walk and have a way of bumping into some sort of situation where I end up in a fight.
Yeah, a lot. I know a lot of times you're just out on a walk, and that's
All the
when
time is how it just things happen. I just have a hard time shutting my mouth when I see something.
Well, I think we're all the better for it, and we still, yeah, we're all the better because you don't shut your mouth. Though you are judicious, I will say, you're calculating. I mean that as a compliment.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree with
you're
that.
careful.
Yeah. More careful than people think. People.
Yeah, like I said when going back to what I said about Richie, how there was more to what bird dogging than maybe I knew. That I always know when someone's an expert at something, there's always more to it.
Yeah.
Always. Yeah, and so everybody, if you guys can like, comment, subscribe to the video, you can subscribe to my Substack. If you could tell people about this channel, that'd be amazing because that's the goal, is to get the message out. And otherwise, I guess I want to wish everyone a happy New Year. William, of course. Yeah, have a great New Year, and I guess we'll see y'all in 2025. Huh?
Take care, guys.
All right, guys, take care. Have a good one.